Right now, in your wallet, you're carrying something genuinely strange, a piece of paper worth nothing on its own, that an entire economy has agreed to treat as valuable. That agreement, that shared fiction, is one of the most powerful inventions in human history, and it wasn't dreamed up by a king or a philosopher. It was invented by merchants who were sick of carrying heavy iron coins around, over 1,000 years ago, in a Chinese province you've probably never thought about. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly who made the first paper money, why they made it, and how one Swedish banker's fix for a coin shortage nearly bankrupted an entire kingdom just a few decades later. Let's start with the problem that started it all. In the 10th century, in the Sichuan region of China, under the Song Dynasty, the local government had a metal shortage. Copper, the usual material for coins, was scarce and tightly controlled, so Sichuan was forced to mint its money out of iron instead. Iron is heavy, and iron coins were worth very little individually, which meant buying anything substantial required carrying an enormous amount of metal. A single bolt of silk could cost you somewhere in the range of 90 to over 100 pounds of iron coins. Imagine hauling that to the market just to buy fabric. Merchants in the city of Chengdu had simply had enough. So, sometime around the late 10th century, a group of wealthy merchants in Chengdu came up with a solution. Instead of physically hauling iron coins from place to place, they began issuing paper certificates, called jiaozi, that represented a promise. Bring this paper back to us, and we'll give you the iron coins it's worth. It wasn't government policy. It wasn't a king's decree. It was a practical workaround invented by private businessmen trying to solve their own logistics problem. And it worked so well that ordinary people started trading the jiaozi directly with each other instead of redeeming them for coins every time. Paper had become money, not because anyone declared it so, but because enough people simply started treating it that way. There's an honest gap in this story worth naming directly. History doesn't give us the name of a single inventor here, no equivalent of a single genius credited with the idea. It was a group of 16 of the wealthiest merchant houses in Chengdu who eventually formalized the system, standardizing the notes and managing the exchange between paper and coin. Anyone claiming to know the exact individual who first thought of it is telling you more than the historical record actually supports. What we do know precisely is what happened next, because the Chinese government was watching this experiment closely, and government bureaucracies rarely let a good idea stay private for long. The merchant-run system started running into trouble as some of the issuing houses ran short on reserves and edged toward bankruptcy. So in the year 1023, the Song government nationalized the entire operation, creating an official jiaozi bureau to take over production. On January the 12th, in the year 1024, the first standardized government-issued paper notes went into circulation, in fixed denominations, printed with multiple ink colors and official seals specifically designed to prevent counterfeiting. This is the moment historians point to as the true birth of paper currency as an official state-backed instrument. Not a merchant's clever workaround anymore, but a formal government innovation. China, and specifically the Song Dynasty government, is where and when the world's first official paper money began. The idea didn't stay confined to Sichuan, or even to China. Paper currency spread through subsequent Chinese dynasties, the Yuan, the Ming, and the Qing, evolving and changing names along the way. It was during the Yuan dynasty, under Kublai Khan, that a European traveler encountered it and brought word of it back home. Marco Polo, visiting the Mongol court in the 13th century, described the Great Khan's paper currency with something close to astonishment, explaining to his readers that the Khan could turn the bark of trees into something that functioned exactly like gold. For a European audience still centuries away from anything like this themselves, it must have sounded almost like magic. And Europe genuinely did take centuries to catch up. It wasn't until 1661, roughly 600 years after that first official Song Dynasty note, that Europe got its own paper currency, and this time, we know exactly who did it and exactly why. His name was Johann Palmstruck, born in the city of Riga, in what's now Latvia, to a Dutch merchant father, before moving first to Amsterdam and later to Sweden, where he founded the country's first bank, Stockholm's Banco, a few years earlier. The problem he was solving was almost a mirror image of the one Chengdu's merchants had faced. Swedish coins at the time were made of copper, and Sweden was minting genuinely enormous copper plates as currency, some of them weighing close to 20 kilograms for a single coin. When the government reduced the copper content of newly minted coins in 1660, worried depositors rushed to the bank demanding their older, heavier, more valuable coins back, a classic bank run. Palmstrucker's bank didn't have enough coins on hand to satisfy everyone, because the money had already been lent out. His solution, on the 16th of July, 1661, was to issue what he called credit notes, paper certificates in fixed denominations, personally signed by Palmstruck and his clerks, that people could exchange for coin value on demand. These were Europe's first true banknotes. For a while, it worked beautifully. The notes were vastly more convenient than lugging around slabs of copper, and they spread quickly through Swedish commerce. But Palmstruck made the same mistake that had doomed some of those early Chinese merchant houses 6 centuries earlier. He started printing more notes than his bank could actually back with real reserves. Lending outpaced deposits, note issuance outpaced coin reserves, and by 1663, the value of the notes began visibly falling as confidence eroded. The unraveling that followed took several more years to fully play out. Mounting redemption demands through the mid-1660s, a formal court judgment against Palmstruck in 1668 for mismanagement of the bank's books, and his imprisonment following that conviction. Out of that collapse, the Swedish government founded a new institution from the wreckage, the Bank of the Estates of the Realm, which still exists today, renamed the Sveriges Riksbank, and which now holds the title of the world's oldest surviving central bank. So look at the shape of this story. Twice, in 2 completely different civilizations, 600 years apart, the exact same problem produced the exact same invention. A physical shortage or an inconvenience of metal currency, solved by paper backed by a promise. And both times, that same invention was followed by the exact same failure. The temptation to print more paper than the reserves could actually support, and the collapse that follows once people stop believing the promise. That pattern didn't end with Palmstruck either. It's the same tension that has shaped nearly every paper currency system since, right through to the fully government-backed, centrally managed paper and digital money we use today. Money that, since most countries left the gold standard behind in the 20th century, is no longer backed by a promise of metal at all, but by something even more abstract: trust in the government and institution that issues it. So the next time you hand over a banknote, or tap a card that ultimately traces back to the same idea, you're taking part in an experiment that started with Chinese merchants tired of hauling iron coins to market, formalized by a government bureau in the year 1024, and reinvented independently by a Riga-born banker desperate to stop a bank run in Sweden in 1661. The paper isn't really the invention. The trust behind it is, and that's been the real currency all along. If you want more real history behind the objects we use every day, subscribe, because there's a lot more where this came from.